Okay, good morning. So we are doing today Hayam at Bays. We are up to Hayam at Aleph. We were just finishing up the last words of the pasuk of Shir Amalet that we say on Shabbos. So that's what we're gonna start now. It's about 10 lines or so down from the beginning of the wide lines. So the Gemara says, "My nice alum right? We know about alumais. Where do we see that? We see it in Parshas Vayeshev, right? That the brothers, I mean, to listen to Yosef's dream. And so Yosef says to him, "Ma'al malumim seicha sada b'hine kam malumasi v'gam nitzava." Right, and then about the shtach amenu alumasi, your alumais were bowing to mine. Alumais is like the sheaves of the grain. So what does it mean? Nice alumais. So we're carrying our grain. So I'm Rav Chizda v'amlam masisa tana. So Rav Chizda says, maybe we learned from a brisa. Tana kona zeres shiboilas zartain. Normally, if you think about the way a piece of grain looks, right? Think about a piece of wheat. So the stalk is X amount of height, and then at the top you have the ear of the wheat, right? Where the little kernels are there, are the seeds to replant it or the bread to eventually eat. If you think about the length of the stalk versus the top of it, what's bigger? The stalk, much bigger. The ear is much smaller. So normally, the stalk is going to be long, and the ear is short. Here was the opposite. Right here was such a miracle during that time. Not only did it grow, once you have magic beans, so you're going to make a lot of magic. So once you were already making an ace, so they also had very big ears. It wasn't just this. Ear was bigger than the stalk. Right? You imagine this thing that the thing that's growing from the ground, the stalk was smaller than the ear. The ear itself was bigger. That's the Gemara says. Kana zera shibos our time. The ear, the kana was only the stalk was only a zeres, was only like a hand's breadth. But shibolas our time, the shibolas, the ear of it was two of them. I mean, it was double the size. Normally, it would be much bigger on the kana side. Now, if you remember, and you'll keep in mind today, the Gemara opened up by saying, "Amar Rav Nachman Rav Yitzchak, Yer b'Nisan, Yer b'Marcheshvan." And how did Rav Yitzchak answer? He said, "Hachem Rabbi Yechanan." We're going to see that theme play out throughout this rest of Daf Hey, as Rav Nachman's asking questions about Psugim to Rabbi Yitzchak, and Rabbi Yitzchak is answering him, "Hachem Rabbi Yechanan." So let's bear that in mind. Maybe we'll come back if we have time. We'll come back to that and explain that a little bit more. Okay. So Zad the Gemara. Rav Nachman asked Rabbi Yitzchak, "Ma'ay the kara Hashem l'ra'av?" That Hashem called to the famine, the pasuk in Melachim Beis. Over there, the pasuk is talking that Elisha is telling the woman whose son that he saved, saying to her, "Leave. You're gonna have a big famine here. I know we're coming out to Shavuos, and the Rambam writes in Elchus Melachim that the Machla and Achilyon, they got punished. They were Gedali Hadar. From the Psukim, you don't know that in Rus. That said they were Gedali Hadar. Just know that their names. Obviously, their names are meant to give you a hint as to that they were having problems, right? Machla and Chilyon, right? They're both names of destruction, sickness. Obviously, that's deliberate, but the Rambam writes they were Gedali Hadar. And nevertheless, they were punished because they did a big sin. What was the big sin? That they left during famine. What do you mean they left during famine? You're allowed to leave. It's one of the places you're allowed to leave. So it's for famine, for marriage, for yeshiva. So, and Ram said they left because of Tzar Gedolah. Nevertheless, the point was they shouldn't have done it. But here, this woman was allowed to leave. Elisha said to her to leave. Ikar Hashem l'Rav. Hashem is calling that there's going to be a famine here. It's going to come on the land for 7 years, a famine. So you should leave because of the fact that it's not going to be pleasant here. And what did she do? The pasuk tells us she goes to the Pelishtim, and she lives there by the Pelishtim, the enemies of the Jews. She lives there for 7 years, and when she comes back, right? So she has problems with her land. People obviously 7 years. People took her house and her land, so she goes to the king complaining, whatever, to get it back. But Rav Nachman is asking Rabbi Yisrael, what does it mean in this pasuk? What did the Jewish people do who stayed, who didn't go to the land of Pelishtim? What did they eat for 7 years? 7-year famine, they didn't have refrigeration in those days. What exactly they eat? So Amalei Hachem Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan said this is the following: they ate. Shana b'shana achlu masher b'batim. The first year they ate what they had in their homes. Remember, in those days, they must have had rudimentary canning, pickling, salting, right? All the ways of preserving they had in those days. So whatever they had to be able to preserve, they had. Shnia achlu masher b'sadis. Second year they ate what was in the field. Bless you. Second, they what was in the field. Rashi explains, what do you mean Masha B'Sod? There's nothing in the field. They didn't plant. There's a famine. So speak them, right? Whatever would grow, whatever growths they were able to find. Masha B'Sod, that's what they ate. That's what they, by the way, this week's parsha, right? So we're going to talk about that. People are going to say by the Shemitah, Man Noichal B'Shana Sheminis. Hein Loin is Rav, Loin is Savas Tevos Teinu. What should we eat if we didn't plant? And so what does the pasuk say? Hashem says, I'm going to bless your land for 3 years, so you're going to have what to eat. Even if you didn't plant, you're going to be able to eat. No problem. But that's when you're keeping Shemitah. You're literally putting yourself into famine by not planting. And Hashem says, don't want to protect you. Here, whatever they did, Hashem is punishing them. So he's giving them a famine. So the question is, okay, how do you survive a famine? So practically, we're not asking for miracles. We're saying the first year, you eat what's in your house. The second year, you eat whatever gross you can possibly find. You scrounge around. Delicious. Eat whatever animals you have. Right? You give up on whatever animals you have that you've been raising, and now you eat if you find a rabbit, a squirrel, right? A chazir, whatever it might be, you're gonna eat it. So that takes care of the 4th year. So once you finish up on animals, you gotta find your protein somewhere. So then you start eating rodents, you right? Bugs, whatever you can get. Shishas. Sorry, B'nai Sam. 60, you're already be eating your own, you become a cannibal. You'll be eating your own kids. Shavias, besides the same. So now, forget eating your kids. Now you eat yourself. Right? That's how bad it's going to get. Okay, much Nemar. This is Mekuyim, now it says in Pasuk, Ish Besar Zeraya Yechel. A person can eat literally the flesh of their arms. That's how bad the famine was for 7 years. Okay, so we finished that. And that Nimar says the next question I'm not going to answer Rabbi Yitzchak. Normally, Rabbi Yitzchak, I just said B'kir B'cha Kadosh. What does it mean that inside of you it's going to be holy? I'm not going to come into the city. Mishum the B'kir B'cha Kadosh Lo Avay Be'ir. Is it because the insides are going to be holy that I'm not going to come into the city? What does that mean? So it says the Gemara. If you look at Rashi, Mishum the Kibbutz Kadosh, the side, the Marsha adds, B'tmiya, Mishum the Kibbutz Kadosh, Ta'inu Sha'ata, Metiv Ma'asecha. When your insides are holy because you're acting inappropriately, your city is good. Lo Yavar Kadosh Baruch Hu Hashem's not going to come into the city. I don't understand what that means. So the Gemara explains, Amalei Hachem Rabbi Yochanan. This is what Rabbi Yochanan said about the pasuk. Amar Kadosh Baruch Hu. Hashem says to the Jewish people, I'm not going to come in to the heavenly Yerushalayim until the Yerushalayim Shalmata is ready. That is to say, there is, as the Gemara says, there is there a Yerushalayim in heaven? Is there a heavenly Jerusalem? And the city of Yerushalayim, Yerushalayim, the rebuilt Jerusalem, will be like the city that it is mechubar, that it is connected to. It is like it has a twin city, like a sister city. So there's a sister city for Jerusalem. And where is it? In heaven. So what we're saying is, as Rashi says, until you Yerushalayim down below, it's holy. The regular city of Jerusalem, until that is rebuilt and is done well and is in a great state, then I'm not going to come, as it were, into the city that is in heaven. And what I think the Gemara is trying to say here is that it's a sort of a nachama to the Jewish people. That as it were, Hashem's not going to come to his Yerushalayim, as it were, his resting place, whatever that means. So these are all anthropomorphic language. We don't understand what that means. But whatever that means, Hashem's not going to make that happen until we are settled and doing well in the Yerushalayim Shalmata. So as I say, it's a way of it. I can't use the word, but it's a way of incentivizing, right? It's saying Hashem's not forgetting about the Jewish people. The Jewish people first have to come to their own place. Only then Hashem will rest in his own. Okay. So the Gemara, another pasuk. V'amar Rav Nachman Rabbi Yitzchak, Ma'id Sefer Ba'achas Yivara V'Yichsalu. What does it mean that in one thing, Yivara V'Yichsalu, it's like foolish, right? Stupid and foolish. Musar Havolim Eitu, right? It's like a false narrative, a false Musar. Eitu, it's like a piece of wood. It's just waste of time. What is the pasuk talking about? So the Gemara says, Amar Rabbi Yitzchak, unsurprisingly close to Rabbi Yochanan, to say what? Achasi, there's like one thing, Shemveres Rishon Beganim. There's like one thing that really knocks out the Rishon, that really burns them up. What is that thing? Ma'i Avodah Zarah. It's idol worship. Here it says that the Musar of fools, in other words, the idea of the fools, that there is Avodah Zarah. Etzu, it's like a piece of wood. They worship it. Etzim v'avanim. We have another pasuk that says Hevel Hema Masei Tatuim, that it's a bunch of foolishness, the work of fools. So we compare the Hevel and the Hevel. In one place, it's talking about the Masei Tatum is this, the fool's deeds are all about Avodah Zarah, and it calls it foolish. So over here, where it says Musar Havolim Eitzu, it's also talking about the fact that it's Avodah Zarah, it's the work of fools. Yeah. So another pasuk that Rav Nachman asked is, what does it mean? So what does it mean that my nation has done two sins? Kartin who are there really only two sins? Kartin who dahavi are there only two sins? What about the 24? The side says from the Aruch 22, whichever. But Cheskel has a whole long list of sins that Jewish people have done, and now it sounds like you're saying there's only two sins. Like what happened to all the rest? So Rabbi Yochanan explains, Akasi, there's like one sin as you turn the page to him base. There's one sin, Skula Kishtayim. It's like equal to two. And it's meaning it's equal to all of these other sins. My Neo Avodah Zarah. It's like Avodah Zarah. When we say here too, Rashi explains, Tikutiyim v'Kedairayim. We're going to talk about these two nations, that it's like the sins of these people, meaning it's equal to all these other sins that we have. But we don't have to mention them, these 22 or 24 sins, because you have this one sin that's so massive. If you look in the Rashi back on Hamid Al for a second, the bottom Rashi, the Rashi says, what do you mean? What about the 24, the 22 sins? Bitmiyah. Right? And you look in the Cheskel, it talks about Chav Dalet Aver Shav, it talks about 24 sins that they did. The other lashon is that it was 24 Svarim that they're over. In other words, they're violating Tanakh. So if you're going to say it's 24 books of Tanakh, obviously you can't change the gears to the 22. If you talk about the 24 Averis, so then you'll say 22. Why? Because of the fact that that what we're talking with the reference is, if you're already saying that they're doing two Averis, Kishtayim Rois Asami, so then why are you saying 24? It's not 26 Averis, it's only 24 Averis. So if they're already doing two, so you're abandoning only 22. So that would equal 24, right? Just simply the math. Anyhow, that's a more question that Nachman was asking Rabbi Yitzchak. Why is it that we're talking only about two sins instead of about 24 books of Tanakh or 22 other sins, whichever? So the Gemara says, because we're talking about my nation has done two terrible things. I see they abandoned me, right? The Hashem saying they abandoned me. I'm the Makar of the Mayim Chaim, right? The life-giving water, the life-giving forest. To go out and be digging ditches for water in other places. When I'm the Makar Mayim Chaim, and you're digging ditches somewhere else. We have another pasuk over there in Yirmiyah that says, in other words, you're going and looking at the islands of the Kitim. Kitim are, again, some nation, right? They're serving idols. And they're talking about Kedar, another area. What are they also serving idols? And you're going there and you're sort of learning from them, and you're acting like them and going to dig these ditches, meaning going to serve idols and ignoring right here. Right, look what you have right here. Here is the Rebbeinu Shalom. You're ignoring that. And the pasuk then continues a very harsh lashon there in Yirmiyah. Hahemer goy Elohim, vehem Eloi Elohim. Right? There's a nation abandoned its God, and they don't have a God. In other words, they are not serving their Rebbeinu Shalom. They're serving an idol. Did they abandon their idol even though it's stupidity? No. They abandon their idol even though it has no value. It has no. But you, but Ami, but my nation, Hemer Kivaydai, right? They are, as it were, replacing my honor, right? They're doing a Tamura, below Yoel, but using something that doesn't work. They're switching me for something that doesn't work. And so that's mind-boggling, right? The Navi is pointing out, what a zach chutzpah. The Rebbeinu Shalom is the Rebbeinu Shalom. He is actually the one true God. And you're replacing him for idols. Whereas the people that serve idols don't replace their fake idols for another idol. That's a pretty damning incitement, indictment of the Jewish people. What a terrible thing that they did. How could it possibly be? And the Gemara now explains what kind of idols that they worshipped. Tana kutiyim oivdim la'esh, k'diriyim oivdim l'mayim. Right, the kutiyim, they served fire. I don't know if they were Zoroastrians or whatever, but they served fire. And the Kederim, they served water. Excuse me. They all knew, right, that the water puts out the fire, right? Remember, we all remember the little measure says. I mean, I have it right here. The little measure says, oh, this Vayikra. But if you look at the little measure says of Bereshit, what did it say there? It says, of course, the measures that Avram Avinu, right, when he reached a certain age, he went into the Getchka store, and he made a whole fight between the Getchkas, right? And they ended up with just one Getchka holding the big axe, and all the other Getchka heads were down. And the father comes back, Tarek, and says, "What? What happened?" He says, "Oh, this one got angry at that one, and this one. What? What are you talking about there? They can't do that." So they can't do that. You said they're God. And the same way, Avram Avinu came to the realization of the Bernstein. First, he thought God was the sun. Oh, look at the power of this thing that lights the whole world. And he saw his night. It was the moon. Oh, then he thought that's the God. And then the next day it's gone. Next day there's wind and there's rain. And he kept on changing his mind. The next thing, the next thing, the next thing. And then he realized that none of this is real. So these various nations, they have their various idols. They don't change. And they don't give it up. But my nation, when they have the real, the real God, they have to give me up for nothing. Yeah. So another plus there of Nachman has to be Yitzchak. Amar Rav Nachman Rabbi Yitzchak. Yeah. Another example. Nachman has to be Yitzchak. Another question about a pasuk. Ma'idasiv. What does it mean in pasuk when it says Vayikash Zaken Shmuel? That Shmuel got very old. Misiv Shmuel Kulei. Did Shmuel get really old? He dies when he's 52 years old. Because we learned that it says Meis Benun Meis Shana. When did Shmuel die? When he was 52 years old. Zeh Misase Shel Shmuel. The death of Shmuel happened. I'm sorry. Zeh Misase Shel Shmuel Armasi. That is the age of the death of Shmuel from Ramah. So he's asking Nachman, he's asking Rabbi Yitzchak, what does it mean by he catches Zaken Shmuel? Shmuel got old. He didn't get old. He died at 52. It's relatively young, even in those days. So the Gemara explains that Rabbi Yochanan answered. Rabbi Yochanan explained like this: Amalei Hachem Rabbi Yochanan, Zikna kavta alav. He wasn't old, you're right, but he had Zikna jump on him. In other words, as Rashi says, Hilben Sairai, his hair became white. This reminds us of the Gemara in Brachas on Chavches. The whole Ma'aseh there about Blazer and Azariah. Harayni kiven shivim shana. Why? Because you can't get respect as a Rosh Yeshiva if you're 18 years old with a black beard. Doesn't work that way, whatever color beard it was. But you have to have some white hair. So his wife said, "You're a kid." Right? So he had a special miracle that happened to him that he had all of a sudden a lot of white hair. Sometimes you want to understand miracles in a natural way. All of a sudden he had to start dealing with everyone's problems as the Nasi. So as a natural matter, his hair was able to progress very white, very quickly, unnaturally. So he became old. So same way by Shmuel. He wasn't really old, but he became old. Became old, why? Because of the situation that happened. What was the situation that happened? The situation was that Hashem had told Shmuel to tell Shaul to go kill Amalek, and he didn't do the job adequately. First of all, he left Agag. Second of all, he left the Meita of a time. He left over all the animals. So the Pasuk says Hashem got very angry. Hashem said, Nimlachti ki imlachti Yeshua. Because I have nichamti here is, it sounds like I'm a nechama. I'm comforted. But this is kind of a nechama. It's not the kind of nechama that you want. This is the kind of nechama that I've resigned myself to. And you look at the end of Bereshis, Einakim Hashem, right? The Pasuk says over there that he's going to destroy the world, right? In the Mabul, right? The Pasuk uses Lashon Nechama. Nechama here doesn't mean comfort, it means resigned. Right? This is what it's going to have to be. So Hashem says, that's it. It's enough with Shaul. When Hashem said this to Shmuel, said to him, I'm done. Shaul's over from being king. He didn't do what we asked in terms of getting rid of Amalek. So the pasuk says that Shmuel responds to the Ben Shalom. And Shmuel says, I'm the Ben Shalom. Aaron. You made me equal to, or you compared me equal to Moshe and Aaron. The Sif, as we say on Friday night, Moshe and Aaron b'kaina v'Shmuel b'kari Shemai. Moshe and Aaron, on the one hand, right? How could it be Moshe and Aaron b'kaina? How is Moshe b'kahanav? Because the number of Moshe Rabbeinu was the kain initially, right? It was supposed to be until it was given to Aaron. But Moshe Rabbeinu was actually the kain for 7 days, but Shivas Miyamilum, he was the kain. So Moshe and Aaron b'kainav, Shmuel b'kari Shemai. It's as it were comparing them. How could it be that they're comparable? Ma Moshe and Aaron both l'maisi yadayim chayim. It's just like my Moshe and Aaron. You didn't cut down their maisi yadayim, their work, their handiwork in their life. So, what is the handiwork of Moshe and Aaron? Rashi explains. The maisi yadayim of Moshe and Aaron is Yeshua. Yeshua, afhu talmid shel Aaron. The maisi yadav of Moshe and Aaron is Yeshua, and obviously Yeshua outlives them. So, Afani is battle maisi yadav b'chai. Don't kill my handiwork, which is who? To show, don't kill him in my life. So a few points. Number one, how is Yeshua considered the handiwork of Moshe and Aaron? And it's the handiwork of Moshe. Moshe Rabbeinu made him. What about Aaron? So Rashi here quotes the Gemara in Erevin Nundal, famous Gemara. The Gemara tells us, how was it that they taught Torah in those days? They taught Torah in those days. The first Moshe Rabbeinu told Aaron. Then Aaron would sit down, and inside would come Aaron's sons. Moshe Rabbeinu teach Torah again to Aaron and his sons. Then Aaron and his sons will all be sitting. And then we'll come in Zakanim. Moshe will teach the Torah to Aaron, his sons, and all the Zakanim. So now Moshe Rabbeinu taught already 3 times. And everyone will sit down. And then Klai will come in. And Moshe Rabbeinu will teach Torah to Aaron, his sons, his Zakanim, and all of Klai. Then Moshe Rabbeinu will get up and leave. Then Aaron will get up and teach Torah. And Aaron will teach Torah to his sons, right? To the Zakanim, and to all the Jewish people. So now, when Aaron did that, so Aaron got up and he left. Then the Aaron's sons got up and they taught Torah. So everybody heard the Torah 4 times. That's how it happened. So you see that Yeshua is obviously hearing Torah from Aaron. He was part of that group of people, Zakanim, whatever. He was there, and so as a result, he's considered a student of Aaron in that sense, because he learned Torah from Aaron just as well as he learned it from Moshe Rabbeinu. I want to point out, because we missed one Rashi, that I have another proof of that, like the Maratz case is correct. I should mention this Rashi here, this big Rashi here on the top of the page of Omar Mar. So we didn't do this Rashi, but it's about this Gemara. The Gemara says over there in my cotton that Zumi says that Shmuel Masi, that Shmuel dies at 52, and that's not considered curse. That's a proof that it can't be curse. Shmuel didn't die because of curse. So curse is not that age. Curse is younger. And if you look at Rashi continues on going and going and going. And then at the end of Rashi says, it was Seder Olam. Look at the last line of Rashi. In Seder Olam at Timotzi, you're going to find Kishnei Dafin Tosefes at 2 pages more on this. It's just not a Rashi anywhere in Shas. Like talking about the size of the pages of this, like it's just not a lashon of Rashi. That's normal. I mentioned yesterday, but I didn't have the Gemara in my head. I'm Dal and Mabez. I told you. But I found it yesterday. I told you I had another proof that Rashi is like the Maratz case, that this Rashi can't be Rashi, and Maratz case doesn't say it. So I'm mechavan to one that he doesn't have, which is a stira. I have a stira in Rashi in Taanit to Rashi in Brachas. Right, so Rashi here, if you look at the last lines of the Gemara, the Andal and Beis, Rashi says, that Shmuel says, Amalu Shmuel, Puki v'Amrli la'Abba. So Shmuel said to whoever it was, go tell Rav that what you're saying doesn't make sense. You're gonna say you're gonna say Mashav Ruach on Shmini Atzeres, on Shmini Safek Shvi, then you're not gonna say it by Mincha, by Marav, by Shachar, you're gonna start saying it again by Musaf on Simchas Torah. This doesn't make sense. You already Mekadosh the Yom of Shmini Safek Shvi. You already said it's a Yantif, so you already said Mashav Ruach, so you gotta say it by Mincha. So the Lashon, he says, Puku, go, va'amr Abba, and tell Abba. So Rashi says, Abba, Chavera, he's my friend. Go tell my friend Abba. So what I mentioned yesterday, I think quickly for a second, is that you have to look in the Gemara in Bracha. 2 times in Bracha, Shmuel calls Rav Abba. Once on Samach on Beis there in Brachas. But I was talking about the Gemara on Mem Zayin. I thought it was like a Mem Gil, Mem Dal. I couldn't remember yesterday. So on Mem Zayin, I'm on Aleph. Over there, Shmuel calls Rav Abba, and over there Rashi says Lichvoida. It's the last lines of Rashi. It's like a few lines of Rashi. Look at the last line. Rashi says he called him Abba Lichvoida, to honor him. Now this is a reference for me to a Gemara in Chul and Kuf Lam Zayin. Over there, the Gemara says that Shmuel gets somebody gets angry at somebody for calling Rav Abba Aricha. And that was what his name was. His name was Abba, and he was very tall, so he was called Abba Aricha. We call him Rav, like the Rav, as a way to honor him. So which Rashi is correct? I don't know. In other words, is it a covet to call him Abba? That's his name. Or is it a covet to call him Rav? Right? It could be. It makes more sense to call him Rav as a covet. To call him Abba is not such a covet. So I'm not sure I understand Rashi and Brachas. Based upon the Gemara in Chulin, I don't know that. That makes sense to me. When you call him Abba, it makes sense. It's more like Chaverai. It's more like my friend. Right? So I'm not sure which Rashi actually makes more sense. I don't know. But put that on the side. It's a steer in Rashi, because Rashi is saying Abba is called Kvaidoi in Brachas, and Rashi is saying he called him Abba to say he's my friend. That is what I'm saying, is a point that shows you that it's a different approach in these 2 Rashis. Okay. Nevertheless, so back to our regularly scheduled programming. So this Rashi over here is also clear to me it's not Rashi, because Rashi doesn't quote. And Seder Olam you're going to find. Rashi quotes Seder Olam, sure, many times. But saying Seder Olam you're going to find 2 pages of Tosefes, more on this. But you're not telling me what it says on it. You're just telling me I'm going to find more stuff about it. 2 pages worth. Sometimes Rashi does it. Yeah, if you look over there, you're going to find more. But 2 pages? I can't think of any other place where Rashi says that. Okay. All right, so we're up to now the fact that Shmuel dies at the age of 52, which was Zikna Kaptzalo. She said, reminded that Gemara in Brachas about Chavches, where what do you call it, Bezim Nazariah becomes also like old, preternatural, like outside of his normal time. And why did it have to happen over here? Because it had to happen over here because Shaul had done something wrong. He had not killed Amalek as he was supposed to. Hashem says, I'm resigned to getting rid of Shaul. Now Shmuel is davening to the Ben Shalom. He's saying, Amar lefaner Ben Shalom, shekatanik Moshe Aaron. You made me equal to Moshe Aaron. This is Moshe Aaron v'karnav Shmuel v'kar Shemai. Ma Moshe Aaron lo bot l'maisi yedei mechayayim. Just like Moshe Aaron, you didn't destroy their Maisi Yoda. Who was there? Maisi Yoda, Yeshua. They both taught him Torah. So he outlives them. So Afani lo yispat l'maisi Yoda b'chai. So don't let my Maisi Yodayim be destroyed in my life. And you might say, well, what was the Maisi Yodayim? I mean, is it enough to just simply say that that he anointed him? Is that enough to make him Ma'aseh Yoda? Maybe. But I want to point out one additional pasuk that if you look in Shmuel, you'll see it'll be delicious. You have to look there in Shmuel. The pasuk says that after he anointed him, Elasam Hagaga, and they went up onto the roof, and the pasuk says that they were there on the roof all that night. They were there on the roof. Shmuel was teaching Shaul whatever he taught him. We don't know what happened on that roof. Whatever he taught him, to me, that's his Ma'aseh Yadayim. Yes, he anointed him. I don't know how long that takes. Whatever he did in terms of that. But give him over his whole Masar, give him over everything. That took place, and the Torah doesn't say anything about what happened. Doesn't say what spoke about. And the Lippy goes out of its way to talk about the tznius of Shaul, which we've talked about because we had that both in Araya and we didn't have it in Megillah, but we also had Megillah in Gimel. The tznius that was by Rachel, the tznius by Shaul, the tznius by Esther. There was a tznius in that family. Specifically, it's tznius, very different than Leah, Vatetse, Dina, right? And the Vatetse Leah and Vayetse, Vayishlach, and Vatetse by Leah, by Dina. Okay, different approach. But but there was a certain sneeze. So Shaul never said over what happened. They never said over became the king. Obviously, didn't say over what happened. But to me, maybe that's a little bit of why it says Ma'aseh Yadav. He gave him over something that night. He taught him. He taught him everything he had to know to be the king. All right. So it says the Gemara. Omar Kadosh Baruch Hu of it. Hakadosh Baruch Hu, as it were, again with all the Elif Alfi Abdullah Hashem, as it were, said, "Well, what should I do? Lima Shaul like a Shmuel to kill Shaul, which I want to kill him because of what he did. Shmuel doesn't let me." Again, whatever that means. Lima Shmuel to kill Shmuel at the Zutar Mirani Abasre. To kill Shmuel at this stage, we're gonna have the Zutar. Rashi says the Bakr, meaning the chattering classes, right? The masses. They're gonna start yapping. Oh, he must have been a bad guy. He died young. Yeah. So we don't want that. Loy limush Shaul, v'loy limush Shmuel, but not to kill Shaul and not to kill Shmuel. But we can't do that. If we're going to let them both live, that doesn't work either because already we have the Malchus of David. And we can't have a Malchus touch on another Malchus even for a moment. Even for a moment. We have to make sure that they are spread out. Now, this is unbelievable Gemara because we had a Gemara in Brachas. If you remember, I'm Ches. The Gemara said this exact situation. And over there was also Rabbi Yechon. And over there we were talking about what? The yapping girls. Remember? The pasuk told us over there that Shaul said to the girls, "Where's the raya? Like, we need to go find it because they're missing a bunch of donkeys." And so the girls say, "Well, today is the day they're going to go to serve for sacrifice. And when you got to go to the sacrifice, they're not going to eat until he gets there because he's the raya and everybody has to wait for him." It's like, what? It's so lengthy. So the one answer to the more the Pashut line is they were just so stunned, right? Shaul was so handsome; he was the number one model, right? I don't know if he's the number one model. We don't know if the pasuk says exactly, but the pasuk b'shichmei v'malagav. He was just the tallest, the hand. He was a head and shoulders above everybody. Not for dandruff shampoo. He was like just taller than everybody else. So they were very attracted. So that's why they were just yapping, just to keep on the moment. The more they can stare at his countenance. That's the one. But the Gemara says, no, they had to keep on schmoozing with him. Why? Because in Machas Nagas B'Chavetz I feel Kamali Nima, and since it was still time for Shmuel to be the head, then they had to keep on going with him until it was time for Shmuel's reign to be finished and Shaul could take over. So you have it now on both ends. Beginning of Shaul's reign can only start when Shmuel's is finished, so you have to delay him, and now we are going to have to ensure that Shaul's reign doesn't go too long because it can't interfere with David's. All right, so we finish the Gemara. Hashem says, "Oh, I have a solution. What's the solution? I'm going to make him get old." That's what it means in Pasuk. The Pasuk says that Shaul was sitting in Giva. It's a place. Underneath the tree of Ramah. What does that mean? Ramah is a different place. It's in Har Ephraim. In Giva, it's a Ramah. What does it mean? Obviously, the Pashup Shah is not talking about the Ramah, the tree in Ramah, but the Pashup Shah is talking about whatever the big tree. But the Gemara is saying, what is the Pshat? They're saying that Shaul is sitting under this tree, and that's in a different place. To explain to me, what enables Shaul to live for another 2.5 years? The tefillah of Shmuel, that Daven, that he should be able to extend his Melucha another 2.5 years, because Shmuel said, I don't want to see him dead. I don't want him to die while I'm alive. Is it such a possibility that you have a person who is going to get pushed aside for another person like this? That you're basically saying that Shmuel is going to die because of what Shaul, did? Yeah. I'm sorry. The Lashon of Rashi is umi minchi gavra b'tagav is the ilchi Shmuel becoming David, right? That because David has to become king, right? So and Shaul has to die. So we have to do this progression like this: that Shmuel's going to die, then Shaul's going to die, and then David's going to become king. I got to make it all perfect. Is that how things actually works? The Moshe says, and that is actually how it works. Or as the side points out, it's always Rabbi Yonasan, so we got to change it to Rabbi Yonasan. What does it mean? The pasuk says that Hashem, as it were, is chatzavti b'navim haragtim b'imrefi. He's going to be like killing these neviim with his mouth. The masem le'nemar doesn't say that he killed them because of their deeds. El b'imrefi. Hashem is, as it were, killing the prophets with his words. What do you mean? Alma minchi gavra mikami gavra. In other words, Shmuel didn't do anything wrong, but it had to happen in this way because Shmuel davened, he doesn't want to see Ma'aseh Yadag to be destroyed in his own life, and Shaul can't live too long because David has to become the king. So that's why it all had to sort of work in this progression where Shaul is going to outlive Shmuel, but yet die in order to make sure that David becomes the king when he becomes king. So this is the end of this Gemara of all the questions that Rav Nachman asked Rabbi Yitzchak, and Rabbi Yitzchak answered b'shem Rabbi Yochanan. So I just wanted to point out and conclude with this, that, and we're going to see, well, later on, look on Tess, on the top of Tess, you're going to see, Ask Rabbi Yochanan l'nuka de Vishlakish. Rabbi Yochanan found the child of Vishlakish, Amalei em l'psukecha, what's your pasuk? And as we pointed out before, this is a known trope of Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan says, look at the Gemara in Chulin Sadi Hey, Rabbi Yochanan says to a child, Psukecha, tell me your pasuk, and he dashes out from the pasuk what it's going to be. Because as we pointed out before, not everybody in the Amiram or the Tanaim knows Tanakh. Right? You have a Manda Amar throughout Shas called Bechanina Kara. He's an expert in Tanakh. Not everybody was an expert in Tanakh anymore. But as our Dal tells us, Rav Safra, they didn't know Tanakh. Or Ravo, that he does know Tanakh when he's asked by the townspeople, how do you know Tanakh so well? He doesn't know Tanakh so well. We gave him a tax break because of the fact that he told us he's a rabbi. Now we asked him a question Tanakh he doesn't know. So Ravo says, because I have to deal with you. I'm the rabbi of the town. He's Rosh Yeshiva. He doesn't have to know Tanakh. He doesn't have to give shir on the Gemara. But I have to deal with people like you, so I have to know Tanakh. And so you have situations where seemingly, people don't remember. People don't remember a pasuk. You have, we talked about Rabbi the other day. Somewhere says in Avodah Zarah and on base that Rabbi forgot a pasuk. And when somebody came along and said to him, he said, "Oh, I found my Avid. I remember the pasuk." Happens, right? More in the Malkama tells about the situation where literally somebody didn't know about Vaisha didn't know about the Luchas. He didn't Naseres Dibros. He didn't know what it said in Naseres Dibros. You know what it said in Naseres Dibros? Yeah, he didn't know. He didn't know where Naseres Dibros was possible. So Rabbi Yochanan really knew Psukim very well, and this pasuk shows that not only did Rabbi Yochanan know Tanakh, but we have a Gemara. We had a Brachas. The Gemara in Brachas, and hey, the Gemara told us there that Rish Lakish said that Yisurin don't come to somebody who keeps Hashem's words. That if somebody's really doing Hashem's word, then he's not going to have Yisurin. Yisurin are going to be away from such a person. Fantastic. Says the Gemara that Rabbi Yochanan says Rish Lakish, I feel Yenuka. Even a kid knows that. Why? The Pasuk says Ba'ad B'Shalach, because Rish Lakish quoted the Pasuk in Navi. So Mizei Rabbi Chulin Resha V'Chetzef Mibiri. So Rabbi Yochanan says, what do you mean? As a pasuk, every kid knows this pasuk. The pasuk tells us in Parshas B'Shalach, something or other. I'm not going to put on you. Oh, this week's Parsha. Look at the Rabbi Ramban. Huge machlokes, the Ramban versus the Rambam. Look at the huge Ramban and Bichul Kaisei about doctors. Compare that to the Rambam. The Rambam in Masechet Pesachim, Parak Dal. Mishnah Tess. Look over there, you'll see the difference in the Rambam and the Ramban about doctors, and they're both doctors, which makes it even more juicy. But over there, the Rabbi Yochanan is telling Rish Lakish, Hashem's the doctor. It's Pashut. Of course, if you don't do Averis, you're going to be perfectly fine. So you see a situation Rabbi Yochanan not only knew Tanakh, but he knew and gave over Tanakh enough that Rabbi Yitzchak was able to quote him and all these psukim. Oh, I heard from Rabbi Yochanan like this. I heard from Rabbi Yochanan like that. So it teaches us not only was he ma'ayim Sefer Agadata on Shabbos, so he knew Agadata. Of course, he knows all of the lumdus and everything, because he's Rabbi Yochanan. He's the one who's decided the Talmud Yerushalmi. But he's an expert in Agadata, he's an expert in Tanakh. He gives shir on all of it. All right, stop here.